Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed,
Mm.
weekend ahead, uh, but some other stuff to look back. Happy post Thanksgiving, and we got obviously we say we got to catch up on some stuff since we didn't have a show last week.
Yeah, we didn't have a show last week. I mean, everybody thought there was no fucking sports because there was no UFC. But we took off for Thanksgiving. There was actually a lot going on that week leading into Turkey Day. I guess we should mention it right off the bat. We didn't get to talk about it. We kind of work. Matt and I were almost did an emergency reaction video, but it was Thanksgiving week, and we were kind of just like we don't know enough about what went on, but PFL acquired Bellator, and I mean, after I wrote something for my MMA News, if you haven't checked it out yet, I mean, after I had my doubts about it, I wrote about all the positive moves they could make and shake up the landscape of MMA, all the things pretty much people complain about, or people that have been watching the sport long enough to know that it's time for something new to happen. This mixed martial arts is still yet to evolve and do new things, or combat sports in general. I think PFL is in a ripe spot to do it. By acquiring Bellator, they can pick up everything, the tournaments that they do. You have their seasonal tournaments. They can do the Bellator tournaments. You have a lot of good champions in Bellator now that you can do they're obviously going to do their champ versus champ fights next year. There's divisions that the UFC doesn't have that the PFL can start, and whether they want to do it in Bellator or do it as a PFL champ thing, or co-promote, or SmackDown versus Raw, the recipe. There's a lot that they could do there, so I'm hopeful for something positive, despite the fact that they don't really sell their shit that well. Because I'm sure you all know by now they did have a championship, their season ender on the day after Thanksgiving, and I know folks watched it, but I'm pretty sure nobody watched the press conference that they had on Thanksgiving Day.
No, 4 o'clock press conference on Thanksgiving Day is probably not a huge
The
crowd
worst
filler.
move you could do.
Um, like you said, we held off an immediate reaction because for me it was going to be pretty much negative. And I feel like rightly so. I feel like the history of MMA, the short history, the 30 years of known MMA in this country, this has never worked out before. It's always just led to the demise of everything. Um, it has. Every organization that's tried to buy another one, other than the UFC, everybody that tries to openly compete with the UFC, everybody who tries to do this kind of thing has always failed. So, on the positive, if it works, this could be the best move in the history of the sport because it could actually elevate everything to a new level of competition between the UFC and the PFL. But unfortunately, I, I'm selfish. You mean we've unabashed Bellator stands. You're wearing the sweater still right now. I've
Mm-hmm.
talked on ad nauseum about my history going to Bellator events, and um, so for as a personal point, it makes me sad just because it's an event that I'll never be able to go watch again. They're
Mm,
already talking about doing the Bellator stuff internationally, which
yeah.
I think is a mistake. If especially if that just means you're going to push because I mean, maybe I'm delusional, but in my mind, the Bellator fighters are way more famous and known in the United States than the PFL fighters.
Mm,
Maybe I'm in my own bubble, but like I don't know anybody on this planet who could name more than 2 PFL champions.
mm.
Um, just me. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Obviously, we have MMA, people that we could reach out to, and they would give us an answer in a second. But I don't know any casual fans that just know all the more than one. More than one. I don't know if any can even name one, to be honest with you, of just the average MMA fan that you see. Um, Whereas Bellator seems like there's some name guys. Again, we were
Yeah.
kind of we were into the organization, so they were good to us. But I just feel like more people know Ryan Bader and and Pitbull and
Pitbull Brothers, the
yeah,
Patchy Mix, Eduardo Dantas,
the
Joe Warren, like all the.
Nurmagomedov name, like the it just seems like there's so much more, there. Even Eblin seems like he had picked up a nice, you know,
Oh yeah, he was literally like he. I don't know if he's been better than he's. I mean, he's literally like he's so good. He's one of those people that, like, if the UFC had a chance to scoop him up with this whole thing, they should have. Um, but
It just seems sad to me, like if all of a sudden Patchy Mix's next 5 fights are over the European landscape at 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, when
hmm,
like if
yeah,
that's what they're saying they're going to do, they'll make Bellator their international events, and
yeah, and
we've already,
obviously their
and
timing and scheduling is not. They haven't been picking the
it's
greatest
not good.
days.
I mean, they
It's
still
not
haven't
good.
they still haven't been able to stream their events from Europe.
Hmm.
So you're saying we're going to send Bellator to our international audience? I don't remember the last time. I mean, maybe they figured it out last minute, but I know the last PFL that they had in what was it, France, with
Yeah.
Dumba fighting, um, like
Hmm.
they didn't it wasn't available
That's right. Yeah.
legally in the United States to watch. Um, so I'm going, well, France is one of Bellator's stopping grounds, so I guess if they swing into France, that me and you will never be able to watch it. So I'm concerned about that. I also don't think they'll keep Bellator around very long, because when they do the head-to-head matches, I think Bellator is going to dominate,
Well,
and I
yeah.
think it's going to damage the brand PFL by doing that, because how do you rebound off that if Bellator sweeps through the PFL, and then you brand your brand PFL as the main, your main big,
Hmm.
that's, the PFL. You bought
Yeah.
Bellator. So
Yeah.
to me, it would make more sense to honestly absorb everything and just have fighters fight each other. Have some tournaments on the side to establish championship contenders. Maybe you
Hmm.
still win $1 million, but it's $1 million and a title shot. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then the champions fight for $1 million when they defend their belt. Like, let's do this right. If we're gonna act like we're a bunch of, you know,
Hmm.
oil, tycoon billionaires, then let's do it
Yeah.
right. Let's do it right. So I don't know. I don't. Don Davis, some of the stuff he said, I was not super familiar with him as I was many of the other MMA promoters slash owners slash presidents, whatever. He seems
Whatever.
like he's saying some of the right stuff now, but I just don't. I don't see how it works very well, because if the UFC feels any pressure, they start countering
Hmm.
Bellator pay-per-views and Bellator, or not, PFL
Well,
events and
they're
stuff.
all with the same broadcast partner because yes, there was. I think it was today that I forget when I shared the press release that they sent. It was either yesterday or today that they've extended it's multi-year now with ESPN. So PFL's with ESPN, UFC is still with ESPN at least for the till the end of this 2024. I think their deal's till 25. So, I mean, they can't really. I don't think. And Dana White's kind of hinted at it that he doesn't really try to throw too much shade their way, even though he did not the last time when he talked about them not selling a gate. I mean, when Doug Yanofsky asked the question at the press conference that he asked about co-promoting, he got a little crazy with it. But I think that was like, the TKO Vince McMahon influence talking before he realized, wait a second, we're both on the same network. At that moment, though, it wasn't, it was up in the air whether or not PFL would renew, and they just did. I'm assuming ESPN wants to just own that chunk of a big chunk of combat sports, because now, if it's all under the same banner, PFL, Bellator, UFC are all ESPN properties now, at least for broadcast
for
rights.
for now. I
Hmm.
don't think UFC is in the long run going to stick with ESPN. That's just my opinion. I
I
don't think they're
agree.
I don't think they're going to stick with Disney owned company.
Yep.
I think that there's probably already a lot of stuff behind the scenes. You've heard mentions of Dana White basically telling people to F off if they want him to change,
Hmm.
tweets and
Yeah,
and ads and stuff like that. So,
I agree.
reading between the lines and kind of knowing other things that are going on this planet right now,
Hmm.
Disney, I kind of point a finger at Disney, and it makes a lot of sense. So, uh, I think, but see, this is where the whole thing, and the thing we've brought up about promoting and people promoting events, and Josh Thompson and some of those guys having issues about Bellator, right? And we said it. PFL is now an ESPN company. But when PFL was on ESPN before, you never saw, ESPN was never, or PFL was never on Sports Center. PFL
Hmm.
was never getting advertised. You want the biggest way for PFL to become a challenger for the UFC is if the UFC leaves ESPN and ESPN promotes PFL like it's the number one organization in the world. If they do that as their thing, as their pay-per-view, as their thing, and they don't put UFC on ESPN, they don't UFC pay-per-view, you don't know about it anymore on ESPN.
Mhm.
That could change things big time.
Yeah.
That's all of a sudden when you start selling pay-per-views and stuff for PFL, when you have the PFL fighters all over Sports Center, when you have them
Mhm.
getting interviewed by Stephen A. Smith. I know he's not a big, a lot of MMA guys don't like the guy, but he has a trillion viewers.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
want, you want a PFL champion to be known, put him on
Mhm.
First Take with Stephen A. Smith
Mhm.
in the morning. I mean, it's just how it works. So there is a potential, and I was always surprised ESPN did not push PFL more when under their banner. But I think this re-up, I always felt like it was almost like a time buy prior, where it was
Yeah.
like, okay, we'll kind of give you the time, but we're not really going to do anything with you. I feel like this one maybe re-upping, maybe it's more of a real deal between the two,
Mhm.
where they
Yeah.
want to promote each other. So
Yeah,
hopefully that's the
I
case.
think that happened because ESPN, especially if you follow the ESPN MMA like news channels and cycles and whatever, they were not uh one of those. They weren't like everybody. Dick rides and only writes news about the UFC. They hardly wrote about Bellator, but ESPN did, especially when there were significant title changes. Big giant events like 300 was covered by ESPN, and even this acquisition was. I mean, obviously for the network issue was covered by ESPN. So when they listed Patchy Mix for a couple of their nominations for fighters of, I forget, of the year or best in pound for pound or whatever they had their list there, they did put Bellator fighters in there. So at least in that sense, I feel like because of Bellator's acquisition, maybe that made ESPN say, wait a second now, don't walk out the door so fast, honey. We're not done talking, so
Yeah, I was
yeah.
kind of thinking, hey, we kind of got like a UFC clone here. That if we put the ESPN banner behind it and really push it, we probably can make a lot of money off of a deal that was real cheap for us, as
Mhm.
opposed to the deal they got to work out with the UFC. And
Yeah,
you
plus
know,
it could exactly the deal, like you just said it, the deal they could work out with the UFC if they want to extend with them and do more. Like this is probably leverage they're probably going to try to use to say like, hey, if you guys want to leave, go ahead. We have PFL Bellator, so we'll still have combat sport. Where else are you going to go? It could be one of those, because who knows how these deals go, and when it comes to negotiations. I mean, you and I don't make deals that large. But I could only imagine because I'm reading a lot of shit now about people that make deals like this. So you never know what they're doing just for leverage. It could just be they said multi-year, but I'm like, you know, as far as it was the announcement came from the PFL, so we don't really know what ESPN side is because PFL is the one saying it, and as you and I both know, a lot of promoters like to put extra sugar on their sugar coating.
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So I mean,
Uh,
really quick before we talk about what lies ahead, talking about PFL championships and their champions, I always mess up his name, Oliver Aubert Mercier OAM, as everyone calls him, Canadian champ that won at the PFL championships, announced his retirement. Um, and we were just talking about it before we recorded. I feel like that's the probably the most boss move to date in combat sports as far as MMA is concerned.
it's one of them. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of them. That one that paid off. I mean, you had guys try to leave the UFC to fight Fedor and stuff, and it didn't work for them. They
Mhm.
got pay, they got good paydays, but they didn't. It
Then
didn't.
that
It
was it.
wasn't
Yeah.
victorious, And then they had to go back to the UFC or in Tim Sylvia's case, go to fight. You know, get knocked out
ACA
by
or whatever.
boxers and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible fights. Um, yeah, I mean, I really think it is. What else would you do? I mean, he went from going from like a 2020 contract with the UFC to 6 fights later,
Hmm.
roughly. Maybe he had a qualifying one or something. So 6, 7 fights max later, the dude just pocketed $2 million
Yeah.
um, over a 2 year span. And I mean, I don't. There's really nothing to compare it to that I can think
Hmm.
of where a guy who was kind of he put on some good fights, but was kind of an afterthought for the UFC,
Hmm.
um, going somewhere and really raking it in. I mean, who was it? Palmer. Who was the two time? It wasn't Palmer. Who was the 2 time champion in PFL? Um, out of Uriah Faber's camp, lighter
Oh,
weight.
Jesus, I should know his name. He
I
wrestled
know, I know.
but Lance, yeah, Lance Palmer. You
Lance
said it.
Palmer.
Yeah,
Lance
yeah,
Palmer.
yeah.
There you go. He won 2 tournaments. but he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. He had come from more the WEC, I think, more some of the stuff back in the day. But
And then he fought World Series of Fighting, and before they turned to USA
there you
champ
go,
there.
there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, so he worked his way up there, but he was a guy who, but he didn't go directly from the UFC
No,
or a
but
big
the
organization.
conversation was had like when he won the second title after their season format and got $2 million. I mean, there was articles being written that were saying like the UFC can't afford Lance Palmer now because the guy's a millionaire.
Why would he go to the UFC for
Yeah,
what they're
yeah,
offering? It doesn't
yeah.
make any sense. He can take the next 10 years off and still have
Mm-hmm.
as much money in the bank as if he would have just fought in the UFC for all that decade instead. But yeah, I mean, power move. Great way to end your career, man.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go on top better
Congratulations to
than
him.
that. Yeah, congratulations to him. And like I said, it sounds like he's gonna stick with maybe working with them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's even better,
And
man.
I
Lifetime, or
mean,
paychecks are always good to keep collecting, no matter how many millions you got.
yeah, and if you guys been following my work expectations sports, I have his teammate Michael Dufort, who just picked up the Cage Titans title, fought in the PFL, picked up the Cage Titans title, fought fighting on the other circuits, and the last thing he told me, you can go to their YouTube channel to check out the interview, was that he and the PFL were having in conversation. But like one of the things he was kind of like a little frustrated with was that how he hadn't gotten a call from the UFC yet, and Bellator PFL outside of the conversation with PFL, Bellator hadn't called up, but now his name is already in the Rolodex of two out of the three top organizations in this region. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if 2024 has Michael Dufort's name back on the PFL roster, who's especially with his teammate being a former champion from this year. So some stuff to look forward to.
Speaking of stuff to look forward to, the weekend of violence really kicks off tomorrow night. I know there was a one championship card this morning that looks like it had some stuff.
Kevin Nicholson chiming in before we I want to give some of my MMA pay per view buzz to PFL instead of the UFC, but PFL has to fix the pace. Yeah, the pacing between fight nonsense. It's so
They
tedious.
they have
Oh
a
my
lot to
god,
work on. They got to get over the
you
local
said a
scene.
mouthful, Kevin.
Yeah, they got to get over that small time. Let's just kill an hour between fights so the fans can drink beers and that kind of attitude. But a lot of it has to do with the commercials. Who knows what kind of deal with they had with ESPN? They may have had to fill that thing with so many damn commercials just to even have the
Mm-hmm.
time slot. That hopefully that's all been corrected because, like you said, you got people like you who want to go out and put money towards them and support
Yeah,
them, which is
I mean,
awesome.
not for nothing. It's not an unknown thing. The fact that it hasn't changed, like it needs to change. You've acquired Bellator. You've renewed with ESPN. Somebody at the network should say, okay, listen, I get it. You want to do all this extra X, Y, and Z with the smart cage and this Celsius sports drink and the fucking razor blade deals you got, but we also got to keep the fucking we got to keep eyeballs on this. People are tuning out and doom scrolling in their phones, missing the fights because of your
Yeah, let's just hope they never do. Bella or PFL Bellator salute the troops in Hawaii. We might be in for like a 14-hour card if they ever tried to do that
that's
one.
one thing I'm sad. Like I feel like all that cool co-promotion that Scott Coker was doing is has gone by the
It's
wayside.
gone. It's gone.
You
I
know,
would be I would
which
be
which 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 I'm that right there is that like I need a fucking minute to get over that shit.
I'm with you. I'm with you. But like I was saying, this weekend, violence kicks off tomorrow. BKFC 56.
Oh my
We've
goodness.
we've talked to Wheelock. We've talked to some of the former champions. We've talked to Chris Lytle on the show. But really, this is one of the first shows that we've ever just kind of our main focus is going to be on a BKFC fight card. And I see people getting excited online. I see the MMA fans getting excited online. I see a big smile on your face, and you looking like me when I see it. When the just bleed's starting to come out of
Yo,
you.
yeah,
You're
not
gonna
for
be
nothing.
painting your chest by tomorrow afternoon.
When we had Wheelock on and we talked about because Mike, that was at the beginning. One of the times we had Wheelock on was like at the very big when they first announced Mike Perry and BKFC, and something about that pairing and like the recipe. I mean, it's been paying off in full every time they put that man on. Every time they put that man on a card, they come correct, and he's literally like, you know, if you want to use it like the way Michael Jordan is for boxing or Muhammad Ali, for basketball and Muhammad Ali for boxing, and you have these fighters that kind of like you look at them and they represent the sport. Mike Perry is fucking bare knuckle boxing. He's literally to me he's like a hammer in there, and I honestly, I mean, as much as hey, I mean, you and me, I are both fans of Eddie Alvarez, longtime fans, but I mean, that's for MMA. Bare knuckle, BKFC. I'm sorry, man. I mean, I know I don't mean to give my pick out there all early, but their pictures right here on front and center, and I can't help. I can't hold it in. I mean, I fear for Eddie Alvarez because Mike Perry is he is bare knuckle. He is BKFC in my opinion. That's their poster boy.
Yeah, we normally don't start with the main event, but I don't think you can really avoid it, even though that was unintentional there. I don't think you really avoid it because it is the fight that I think the fight world's going to be talking about tomorrow night. I really, we saw it. I was lucky enough to be in Denver when it was Rockhold and Perry, and just seeing Twitter blowing up with just everything from that fight, and the co-main that night was Mendez versus Alvarez, which was
Mm-hmm.
a barn burner and really the fight of the night that night. Um, yeah, I mean, you kind of said it well. I mean, he's kind of the Jerry West. He's kind of the logo of
Mm-hmm.
BKFC. Like bare knuckle fighting. He hasn't had enough fights yet because there's some guys that are. You got the Palominos. You got some guys that are like
Yeah.
10-0 and stuff. Adams, who we'll get to, one of the former heavyweight champions. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, dude, has a couple losses in 10, 12 fights. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think he's if you were going to make a statue of the 2023 kind of bare knuckle fighter and not say this is Mike Perry, but we're just going to have a mold of kind of the
Mm-hmm.
attitude and everything
Yeah.
that they put off, he really kind of fits that. And in MMA, he kind of got lost in the mix because he wasn't, he was.
Yeah, in MMA he was like a meme. Like people, it was funny to look at Mike Perry. He's walking into the wrong song and X, Y, and Z, and his girlfriend's in his corner. But in BKFC, it's like, dude, like you're going against Mike Perry. He's hurting people. He's a force in there, and it's just this fight. I mean, and not to take away from Eddie Alvarez because he's a force in there too, but. I watched the press conference, them going back and forth at the press conference, talking about Palomino. Palomino wants the winner of this, which is again that fight already sells itself.
Can we have a triple threat?
Yeah, like not for nothing. That fight sells. Palomino against any of these guys sells itself. And if you don't know who Luis Palomino is, go on PFL's website, look at his 2 fights with Justin Gaethje. I mean, there's a reason him and Justin Gaethje headlined twice when it was World Series of Fighting. Just fireworks from guys like them.
Yeah, and the weird thing you mentioned, some of the stuff about there was always stories about Mike Perry about his wife and his girlfriends,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like now I saw a picture the other day. It looks like he's got a couple kids now.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a fan. I mean, it just seems like it. And Sean Wheelock talked about how professional he was. And
Yeah.
when we first talked to Sean that interview, I got to be honest. In the back of my head, I was kind of thinking like, okay, like he's the new guy in town. It's kind of an act. Is that really the Mike Perry? But then you've seen him kind of develop into this prize fighter who's, you're not getting the same kind of disrespectful stuff from him. You're not getting kind of the out of control outburst.
No.
It's more really focused and more of a kind of a murderous attitude of like, I'm here to do a job. I'm going to clean you up. And, like there hasn't been a lot of trash talk in this fight. You've had some stuff. Maybe there was some stuff at the press conference, but
Yeah,
for the
no,
most
there
part,
was definitely trash talk at the press
yeah.
conference.
I didn't catch it yet. I didn't get a chance to catch it, but that
Worth
was
watching.
but that's the stuff that's in the week prior to the fight. They haven't
Like
been
like
online
the
trashing each
energy.
other's families and just
Yeah.
and
No,
being
they're
in the dirt.
actually it's actually like an old school like the press conferences that used to be enjoyable where I mean there's trash talking but it's about their technique and how who's got the more of a chin and stuff like that and just like they went back and forth about their boxing which boxers pure boxing purists will be like come on none of you guys can really box but this isn't really boxing this is bare knuckle and I mean the back and forth between he and Alvarez and then Palomino jump kind of went back and forth with
Oh,
actually he was more going at Not for nothing, Alvarez seemed to have a bullseye on him at that press conference from both, because Palomino was like when he was like, I want to know if any of you are gonna fight me, um, depending on who wins. And he actually kind of looked at Mike Perry and was like, I already know your answer because we know the answer is yes. But he just stayed focused on Alvarez. And I think that's because of Alvarez, not for nothing. He's the senior man in the sport, you know, senior man for combat sports. The damage he's taken over the years. I mean, I know he won against Chad Mendez, but Chad Mendez is kind of just like another him that he fought. Mike Perry. There's just something about it. He just seems more durable for this stuff. I don't know if it's because he doesn't care or he's so emotional about competing under this format, but he just seems more. It seems like a real dangerous fight for Eddie Alvarez. I mean, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna celebrate if he wins, but I just it's really, if this fight is not on your radar for this weekend, like I don't know what the fuck you're watching anymore, like or what's wrong with this world.
Yeah, I like both these guys, but I love Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez is one of my
Mhm,
favorite fighters of all time. I mean, so I will go into this fight rooting for Eddie Alvarez.
mhm.
I don't think he's going to win. I don't think his chin's going to hold up. I think he's going to be the smaller man in the fight. I know he'll be the smaller man in the fight. You can even see it when the in the face-offs and stuff. Um, but this is bare knuckle boxing slash fighting. All it takes is one big straight on the chin, and you might see Perry flat on the ground and
Yeah.
and frozen. You know what I mean? Like it's not out of the
Mhm.
question. And Alvarez is one of those guys who's willing to go to the
Yeah.
depths of hell
Yeah.
to to
Yeah.
try to do that. Um,
Like, talk
I
about toe the line, that these 2 will literally put their feet in front of each other and not move and just fire away.
Yeah, like if one of these dudes quit on the stool, it would be one of the biggest shocks in the history of sports
Yeah.
to me. Like I I,
That's
ex-
somebody's going out.
I
Somebody's
expect somebody to go out.
Yeah.
Maybe a decision if it turns into kind of like the Mendez fight where they. But I just don't know if Alvarez has enough one punch power to really kind of change the momentum. With the Mendez fight, Alvarez got knocked down early, but he was able to come back with a couple knockdowns of his own.
Mhm.
Um, and Mendez isn't Mike Perry, but can he hurt Mike Perry enough to open up the shots that could potentially end the fight? Or at least hurt him enough where he can win 3 of the 5 rounds and squeak out a decision. Because
Yeah.
it's not out of the question if he's active, but both these guys get hit, and
Yeah.
I just hope we don't get some kind of stupid cut stoppage. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
fight's in
yeah.
Salt Lake City, which is not exactly the fight capital of the world. So
Mhm.
you always the good thing is they have that doctor that many of the people have praised. That they're kind of their in-house guy. So he kind of seems to kind of run the show there and seems to do a good job um, with the cuts. Specifically. Um, but I I'm gonna pick. I gotta pick Perry to win. And I think he wins by TKO. I really
Mhm.
do. Whenever if Alvarez wins, I'll jump out of my seat like
Yeah,
and
yeah. No,
celebrate, same
it's
kind of thing, and it'll be. But I just feel like
Mhm.
if Alvarez wins, you probably get a rematch of this. So Palomino probably gets put to the sideline. I mean, how do you not
Yeah.
rematch?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If BKFC wants to keep Mike Perry, they got to give him the fights. And I imagine if he were to lose this fight, the first thing he's going to want is revenge. So
Yeah, yeah.
they're gonna have to do some stuff. Palomino does deserve a super fight. It would be nice to see them bring
Yeah,
over another stud for him, where they can really have a big headline fight that he deserves.
yeah.
But yeah, just a great fight. Just a great, dirty, grimy, you know, bare
Yeah.
knuckle. Like you said, it's not everybody's tea, but you might want to sip on it this weekend
Oh, yeah.
just to get a taste.
Seriously, seriously,
Yeah, yeah. Pinch
because
the
not
nose, pinch the
you
nose, and swallow it down because it's
because you're
gonna be
gonna you're
good.
gonna see you're gonna see highlights from this. I guarantee there's gonna be highlights all over social media. Um, but talking about I mean, talk about some other fights. This fight right here. I mean, these 2 ladies were going at the press conference too. Um, I
Rematch from last April
mhm.
out in Denver. That's when Connor showed up and chaos ensued ringside, and Fahea ended up winning that fight, dominating that fight. Um, I'm kind of surprised there's even a rematch, but I
Mm,
guess when you got the two biggest names kind of in their organization and in this weight class for women, I guess you just throw it out there. We're doing a big pay-per-view fight. We'll put the best two. Who cares if they fight 1,000 times? It's who we got, and it's who's going to help sell tickets. So let's
yeah,
just put them out there. You know what I mean? So,
I
um,
do.
yeah, I think that's a smart move. I don't think you don't have half the world that's 3/4 of the world that's going to be watching this is going to have no idea they even fought 6 months ago. So it's not like it's not like it's going to be fresh in a bunch of people's minds. Me, you, some of the people that really watched it might, but I look forward to this brawl. I think Fahea wins again. I think Rawlings had her run, but Fajea's just a damn beast in there, man. She goes in there.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the only one of the few people I saw her make a girl, Taylor Starling, who went through one of the biggest wars in BKFC history in the early days. She actually quit like after 10 seconds. She took like
Hmm.
2, 3 shots and was like, yeah, no, this is not happening.
Yeah.
Somebody who went through a train wreck in one of her other fights and proved to be extremely tough had wanted no part of getting her face crushed by Christina Fajea. So
Hmm.
while I don't think Rawlings will quit like that, I just think she gets beat up. I think she gets beat up and Fajea wins. Um, maybe not a
Yeah.
finish this time, but I think she dominates.
No, no. I mean, that's what I have in my notes too, just because of the last fight, her experience, and it's hard to not see her retain that title. Um, the next fight is their featherweight championship bout. Um, I, I don't know, man. I mean, you watch these guys more than I do. I'll let you chime in first. I have my pick written down, but I want to see if you say anything that'll make me change my mind.
No, I mean, really, all you've got is I've seen both these guys fight.
Mhm.
Stewart's, I okay, they got him as 4-0 there. Again, it's hard to confirm their exact records on some of this bare knuckle stuff, but I know he's got a nice win over over oh gosh, the other guy who looks just like him, Rusty Crowder. And Davis is like 4-1, 5-1, with a draw against uh, Francisco Rivera or not
Mhm.
Jimmy Rivera. Um, you know, uh, I think Davis wins. From what I've seen, he seems to have a little bit
Hmm.
more of a big punch. Um, and he, he does come off as a little bit less experienced, although he has more fights on the record here when he fights. But I'm gonna say Davis, but not. I have no idea what the odds are. I do know that
Mhm.
Mike Perry was a favorite over Eddie Alvarez, but I don't know the odds for this fight. But I'll go with Davis, just maybe for some pure athleticism. That doesn't always mean a lot for bare knuckle fighting
Yeah.
here, but I feel like he's maybe more of an athlete and more of a you know brings a little bit
Yeah.
more heat with his punches.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying that because like when I was doing putting my notes together for this tonight and looking at this card and looking at their records, I mean, I was looking at Davis and I was initially going to pick him. I mean, my what I have written down is Stewart, but the thing about being undefeated versus someone that has a loss on their record and fighting for a title, that they want to separate themselves for that. So I could see him having more drive to win, or just as much drive as Stewart to retain this title. Stewart's drive to retain the title equates that of Davis's will to kind of take it from him. So I think that's going to make for a fun fight. But I mean, my initial pick was Stewart, so I'll leave what I wrote down.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I would bet the odds are close on the fight. I don't think
mhm,
there's a huge discrepancy between the two.
yeah, and then I mean, they have another title, but I mean, right? This is
Yep, heavyweight titles back on the line after Alan Belcher moved on to Misfit Boxing, and then Masvidal game bred bare knuckle, where he
mhm,
picked up the controversial win recently over Roy Nelson. Um, so yeah, so the belt's back vacant. Former champ who was dominating Belcher before getting countered and put down in the third round. Arnold Adams, who comes in at 7-2, one of the guys I mentioned earlier, kind of cleaned out the heavyweight division at one point. His previous loss before his last fight was to Chase Sherman at BKFC
mhm.
7. Um, so you're talking a big span. He did take. There was a while where he wasn't around, but I mean, he beat the Clecklers, he beat the Beltrans, beat Joey Beltran twice. And anybody who's followed this sport knows that that's
Mhm.
quite a quite a thing to have on your resume. Terrell's come in. He's 6-1. Um, hurt a lot of people. Big puncher from the UK. Um, but I'm gonna go with Adams. Adams is one of those guys who's kind of like a I don't want to say Mayweather because Mayweather was like super special, but he's one of the guys that really uses like technique and he wears down his opponents with good technique. Doesn't tend to take a lot of big shots. And obviously, he got caught by Belcher and stuff. But his I don't know how I don't know. I feel like we're going to see a more fired up Adams, maybe a better in shape
Mm.
Adams, a more focused Adams who is just going to be able to do what he was going to doing before. It seemed like he was a heavyweight who kind of saw everybody's punches and was able to kind of, not matrix it like Anderson Silva, but just
Yeah.
could avoid it, especially for a 260-pound man, or 270-pound man.
Mhm.
Um, but and again, the jab, just his real smooth punches, but he lands them, and he's a big dude who, when he lands them, it tends to drop people. I didn't think he'd beat Kleckler. I didn't think I didn't know what would happen in this Beltran fight, and he dominated and cleaned out both of those guys. Terrell, like I said, has been really exciting to watch, but I don't know if he's. I think Adams is just a really, really good heavyweight. Coming off a fight that he probably should have won and
Mhm.
probably should be defending his title here for like the seventh time in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of those I think the wear and tear might be an issue, especially in this sport with Adams. So I actually have Terrell picked for this one for that reason. I just feel like he might be the fresher man, as far as damage that they're carrying with them long term, so to speak. So that's why I'm going with him. I didn't really do any
They had
picks for
fought before.
yeah. I
The
oh
one
yeah.
loss Terrell has, he was finished by Adams. Um,
Mm,
so,
mm.
he was finished in the second round on the Van Zant. That was what was Knucklemania 1.
Oh,
They
okay.
fought. So there is the history, but that was a while back now.
Yeah,
So a
yeah,
lot of things have
exactly.
changed. Like you said, the wear and tear, that was a handful of fights and some
Hmm.
time away from the squared circle for Adams. But I think it's gonna be. I mean, I just think it's a great fight. These fights, you expect them to last about
Yeah,
30 seconds, but you figure that 30 seconds is going to be really, really fun to watch. That's kind of
yeah.
kind of how it is. So,
I mean,
um,
we got a UFC card this weekend too, but I don't want to go over all these fights, but just really quick, there's because we're
no, the
running.
next one though,
Yeah, the next
Stevens
one
or
we have to
Rivera.
do,
Yeah,
but I mean, just so folks know, the prelims are going to be on Fubu Sports. They have been showing them on Prime Video too, and I think they might be on YouTube as well.
BKFC
But
YouTube channel
yeah,
usually has them also. Yeah,
but I mean, everybody, with Jeremy Stevens and Rivera fighting, this is something that's a fight that and all you UFC centric folks will probably want to tune in for. Um, I don't know, man. I mean, this is Steven's first one in there, right?
first one in there, just signed, just became aware of him even signing
Mm-hmm.
with BKFC. It seemed like just a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Rivera's coming off of a win, and then he had that draw with, as we mentioned with Davis earlier. Um, it's unknown. It's hard to say. Rivera's went in there, but he hasn't looked super impressive. He hasn't. He won his fight, but it was by decision, and then he had the draw. So he's been 5 rounds in both of his fights. Hasn't fought smart, but just hasn't really lit a fire under me as a fan per se. In BKFC for him. Steven
Mm-hmm.
seems like he brings everything to the table like someone Mike Perry
Yeah,
kind of brings to the table.
that was
You know what I mean? He
yeah,
kind of got that insane attitude a little bit with with the just kind of the insanity, ready to ready to hurt someone attitude, and he
yeah,
did it
yeah.
he did it a lot in the UFC and but he was about a 500 fighter, he had his ups and downs in the UFC, fought forever, but
Mhm.
he was hit him get hit kind of guy. So,
He's the who the fuck is that guy, right? That's Jeremy. That's the
yes.
guy that Connor was. Yeah, just
Yes.
for yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
So,
and it sucks that that's his claim to fame from MMA, but you know, like I just said about Mike Perry. I mean, Mike Perry was like a meme character in MMA versus the force that he is in BKFC. So the comparisons all there. Like the history is there, the historical comparisons there. The way they fight is kind of, they're definitely hammers when they throw. I wouldn't be surprised if he can change his whole outlook, the image that he has with fans if he repeats the same success Mike Perry has done in BKFC.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance. So I mean, if I'm making a pick, just kind of blindly not knowing Stevens because I've never seen him fight bare knuckle,
Mm-hmm.
I will pick Stevens just
Yeah,
because of the ability that I've seen him in the past to
yeah,
put people down with one punch. Rivera, not so much. Even in MMA, not I don't recall any just wipeouts, with his hands. Um,
yeah.
I don't. I mean, he had a good career, but not, just not so much of a stand-up kind of wild man style. I think while that could, but like I said, Stevens is a hit get hit kind of guy. If he comes out there
Mm-hmm.
super wild and gets countered, there's not really much coming back. I mean, you do see some great comebacks, but not all that. It's a low percentage. When you get hurt in BKFC, you usually get finished. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you usually get finished because it's real. It's real. You
It's
know,
it,
it's
it's very when you think about this a bare hand striking your flesh, especially in the face or whatever. I mean, the likelihood of that precise precision contact of force that you have wherever it lands could cause so much damage. That's why the stoppages happen, but that's what makes it such a old school, competitive sport
adrenaline
that it,
junkie
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of thing. So I don't know, man.
bloodthirsty. Yeah,
Great card. It's a shame we lost Duffy Rothwell. Looks like
yeah.
that's being rescheduled to February. I mean, if you had that on this card, I'd be getting on a plane to Salt Lake City tomorrow morning. I mean, this is
Yeah,
this
we
is
were just
everything
saying
that
that. Yeah.
this is everything that I enjoy about combat sports. Is fight like this. Let's just hope that the fights live up to the card itself, and it all pays off because, like you said, we don't know who's paying for all this stuff. But the bottom line is we haven't heard a complaint about it. And as long
No.
as everybody's getting paid and people are happy and everybody's kind of saying great things about the owner Feldman,
Yeah.
and Feldman seems to be a decent lead man for the stuff that they're trying to do.
Hmm.
Um, I wish them all the damn best. It's
Yeah.
like, especially in a world like now where we may have just lost Bellator. Like we need there to be successful companies. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be competitors to the UFC, but we want. Why can't there just be a handful of companies that make a profit, aren't worth $9-10 billion, but put on good fights, make some people some money, and
Yeah.
allow fighters to compete and
And do
make
what
money
they
and
love.
do
Yeah.
what they love. And
Yeah.
it's like not maybe not super
Like
restrictive
like
contracts.
yeah, and that's really quick just because the other thing that we didn't talk about when we were talking about the acquisition thing, you got all these Bellator fighters under contract that are like, okay, cool. Like, when can we fight? Because right now we're all on pause, and I mean, we chose this profession where we kind of need to fight. So, Aaron Jeffrey's next in line for the title against Johnny Eblin, and that's where Bellator left off. Like you need to book that right away, PFL. But
See, I feel for somebody like Aaron Jeffrey because
yeah,
historically, that's the fighter in that position is the fighter that gets screwed.
I know.
You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden they'll do a title versus title, or they'll bring in a big free agent to fight Eblin, or you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like that's historically that's
That
the kind
that's
of thing
their
that's
move. Yeah,
happened.
they definitely, like, not for nothing. If they played poker, you know all the moves PFL is going to make, because that's exactly what you just said is exactly what they would do. I remember speaking. I forget who I was talking with, or maybe it was a tweet or something I saw online. But like PFL needs to bring in like fight people. Like, you have to stop using your Hollywood bullshit marketing influencer or whoever the fuck is telling you to do the things you're doing, and bring in like a fight person. Call Joe Silva, that's probably sitting home not doing. Say, hey, well, you want to do this as like a side project, a consultancy or something. They got to do something. They need somebody that fucking gets it, because this weirdness with the smart cage and the fucking XYZ and all the extra bullshit, nobody cares about that. I think Capoza said it best. Like, you need to make fights. All the other bullshit doesn't matter. Just make the fights.
No, and I made a comment to my cousin while I was watching it on Black Friday. Like, that's a busy screen, man. I was just curious what round it was, and I looked at that screen and I saw like 48 numbers. You know what I mean? Like, it was a busy screen. It was names, it was punch speed, it was punch power, it was,
Yeah,
height, weight,
they're
length,
gonna have a takedown of the night, and then they're next to you. So
yeah, Oh God. Um, is that for real?
Yeah,
So you're gonna have people shooting for takedowns with a minute left to try to earn a bonus?
yeah. They're gonna do bonuses, and
Oh,
because they signed a deal with an apparel company called Takedown, so now that makes a takedown of the night. That's what I'm saying.
oh, no.
Everything they do is like of this fucking shisty, car salesman type of fucking marketing gimmicks that they do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. I cross my fingers that best case scenario, we get a good year of just chaos and fights.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
because I don't think it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong more than you can even imagine. But I feel like I'm a beat down. You know, I've seen it so many times. I've seen. We were told Pride was going to continue going. You know, so
Mm,
remember Strikeforce was going to continue going for a while.
yeah,
Remember WEC was going to continue going. Remember,
yeah,
all this
yeah.
stuff was going to continue going, and
Never
no, it
nothing.
never did. There was never another event. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Strikeforce ran a couple under Zuffa and stuff, but there was no reason. There was no reason.
yeah.
Fight nights should have been Strikeforce. Should have been
Hmm.
Strikeforce. UFC Strikeforce fight nights should have
Hmm.
been UFC Japan Pride. I mean, there's so
Yeah,
many things that
yeah.
were
They
so.
went to Japan and did their same shit that they do instead of holding it like when Coker did his stuff like to he tried to make Bellator look like the American version of Pride as much as he could. I mean, he didn't get enough credit for what he tried to do while he was there. And I mean, before we move, just briefly talk about the UFC card this weekend to close out the show. Black Belt Magazine wrote something really cool about Scott Coker. Chris Cyborg shared it, and that's how I came across it. And I reshared it too. So if you check my X handle, Twitter handle, you can find it. But it was a great write up on just how Scott Coker kind of just really loves martial arts competition and tried to do pretty much a fucking what we all kind of us old school fans kind of wanted for the sport. If anyone came as close to doing it, it was him. In my opinion, he just tried too early, but it is what it is.
The pandemic.
Yeah,
It's what happened.
yeah.
They had momentum going. They had
Well,
some
and
bad
also
luck.
Paramount's just run by a bunch of fucking shitheads.
And it seems like they were run by a company who, for some reason, got him super involved with them that really didn't want anything to do with them from the
Hmm.
start.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you don't have to hear me say. Mike Hogan just did a whole thing with Ariel Helwani, where you can listen to how, I mean, Paramount is just like you. There's a guy named, if you want to just really uh, look up Al Dunlap and Sunbeam Foods. It seems to be what's happening with Paramount. If you look up the history of Al Dunlap and Sunbeam Foods, they call him Chainsaw Al. I feel like that's what's happening with Paramount right now, and that's why combat all their sports is just fucking gone this year, and that's that. But really, we're almost out of time. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the UFC Austin card this weekend on ESPN is actually pretty freaking good. I mean, people talk about how there's too many, just because there was a week off, so maybe no one's complaining about too many UFCs. But um, this card is actually really fucking good. Like this UFC Fight Night on ESPN is.
it's as good as it gets for fight nights nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
and it's luckily what they're giving fans when they actually decide to show up to an arena with people for a fight night.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's got, there's some, I mean, just for even the casual fan, there's 5, 6, 7 really good fights on this card
Mm-hmm.
that most everybody would can relate to. Some of the fighters as far as knowing them in the past. Um, Dariush versus Cesaryukin. Uh, does that work? Sorry, I don't know exactly the pronunciation, especially.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but Dariush got his kind of number one contender fight with Oliveira. Got taken, got beat,
Mm-hmm.
finished. Um, so you can number 8 ranked, Dariush 4.
Yeah, these
Uh,
odds are pretty spot on, I think, from DraftKings on the UFC.com website.
yeah,
Plus 240 underdog for Dariush and Saryukin's the Armenian dude is minus 298. So um
it kind,
yeah.
I feel like Dariush kind of had his run. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like hit the Tony Ferguson wall, the George Stadaropoulos wall. The guys who had really long, weird winning streaks in the UFC history, but
Mm-hmm.
never were given true title shots. Um, and the opportunity, and then they eventually hit a wall and lose a couple in a row, and it's over. The dreams of
Yeah.
an actual title fight are over. So
What's
I
funny is Sarukian and Bobby Green almost fought in a hotel. That video is all over the internet now.
yeah.
But yeah. You were saying?
No, yeah, no. I mean, I'm just gonna say I think Saryukian wins. I think Dariush, like I said, I think he's his wall. And I think he kind of got screwed because that he's in the lightweight division at a time where there was 5 lightweight killers that the UFC just preferred ahead of him most of the time.
Hmm.
And while he, almost became a gatekeeper, just beating everybody they put in front of him,
Yeah.
um, he just they just never he was always one fight away, and then the Oliveira fight came, and now we're here. So we'll have to see what happens. It's a big turning point in his career at this point. A win, he's right back in the mix. A
Yeah.
loss, a loss, you probably don't see him
For
in
a
a
little
mega
while.
fight for
Yeah.
a while. He's back probably back down to the prelim headliner kind of
Hmm.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but nice fight. Co-main event: Jalen Turner uh, versus Bobby Green. Um, Hell of a fight. I know Turner took the fight on late notice. I know he made weight despite people thinking he didn't look great this
Hmm.
week, and making it. I see that he is a slight favorite over Bobby Green.
Yeah. For some reason, I
Um,
can't blow it up, but yeah.
Bobby Green coming off of a quick win just a couple weeks ago against Grant Dawson. Um, oh boy, oh boy. My 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 heart's tell my brain's telling me to take Jalen Turner, but my heart's kind of telling me to take Bobby Green. I kind of feel like Bobby Green might be on a little run right now and might be able to hurt a slightly inexperienced in the sense that he hasn't been in a ton of huge fights in Jalen Turner. Um, this is the highest up on the card I think he's ever fought.
Hmm.
Um, especially in front of a live audience. This isn't the apex where you're kind of in your own little shell there. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna take Bobby Green. And I'm gonna say he wins by decision by kind of just picking his shots, dancing around, doing his thing, and
He's
wins
the
a decision.
underdog with the DraftKings. They have him at plus 130.
But
So,
that's a coin flip. I mean,
yeah.
anything under like
Plus
170
130
ish.
to Turner's minus 155,
Yeah,
I
I mean
guess.
it's so close that I don't
Yeah.
that's like okay, we think he might win a split decision. So that's basically what that's telling you. I I'll just go with Green.
Hmm.
I think the late notice might be something for Turner because he didn't seem super excited about taking the fight. Seemed like it was something he kind of admitted that he felt like he was forced to take.
Mm, I mean that's saying a lot too, especially with the what you said about the weight miss and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's oddly enough, I'm not. There's not many fights I'm really hyped about, but one of them that I am. I mean, again, this card is good though. I do like that fight. I'm not super excited to see it, the main or the co-main. This bantamweight bout though, Davison Figueiredo versus Rob Font is on there, and I feel like it's going to be super entertaining. That being said, I'm a little surprised at these odds. I feel like it should be the other way around. These DraftKings minus 130 for Font versus the slight underdog, the plus 110 for Figueiredo. I don't agree with that, but I guess we'll see on fight night. But I can tell you that this fight won't be boring.
So you want to remind me the last time Figueiredo fought at 144 pounds?
Is this fight at that? It says
No, it's a
bantamweight.
135-pound
Yeah,
fight.
yeah,
Figueiredo's coming up from 125 in his
yeah,
quadrilogy with
yeah.
Moreno.
Maybe that might be why I like him.
Yeah, well, but I was going to say, okay, well, if they're doing this at featherweight, then I'll take Font all day long because you're asking Figueiredo to put on 20 pounds for this, but it's at 135. So
Yeah.
that's that, I don't, where they got 147 and 144. Uh, you know, good job, UFC. Um, uh, Still, with that said, Rob Font's coming off a nice victory. Um, but Figueiredo is 21-3. He's former champion. You take away the Moreno fights, he's 21-1.
Hmm.
Um, I'll go with Figueiredo. I'll go with Figueiredo. I think Font has a really good chance in this fight, especially being on the roll he's kind of on. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
go with Figueiredo. Um, by decision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. If anybody finishes somebody, I think it'll be Font finishing Figueiredo with a punch. But
I'm
I'll go with
calling.
Figueiredo.
I'm calling Figueiredo by guillotine.
There you go. There you go. Hey,
but this fight, not for nothing, this welterweight bout. I mean, I wrote down. I'm gonna tell you what I wrote down. I wrote down Brady as my pick, but I want Kelvin Gastelum to win. And after seeing him weigh in today and how he looked and how easily he made the weight, I feel like I should change my answer. But we'll see. I mean, Brady's no joke. I think he's
Brady's
a
no
younger guy.
Brady's
Yeah.
no joke. History would tell you based off where Calvin's kind of been, maybe he's the more elite-ish fighter.
Mm-hmm.
But he also had a terrible run where he had didn't pick up a lot of wins. Um, huh. 170. 170, I got to go with Gastelum. If he's healthy at 170, I got to go with him. If he's
Yeah.
hanging with some dudes at 185 against some of the killers he was trying to fight, um,
Yeah.
I gotta go with him if he's a healthy 170.
Yeah. I got like when I saw him at weigh-ins today, I got shades of him when he almost beat Israel Adesanya. That was the Kelvin. I mean, even though, like, again, he lost that fight, but he almost won it. And I was like, yo, that's the Kelvin Gastelum I want to see. And the energy that he had at weigh-ins today, I was very happy with that. So I wrote down Brady, but I want Kelvin Gastelum to win. And then who else we got on here?
Some of the prelims you got Clay
Yeah,
Guida
Guida
fighting.
by decision.
Whew, he's a big underdog in that
I
fight.
know, but it's Clay Guida, and he's plus 250, yeah, against Joaquin Silva.
I just
I mean,
I
it's
just don't like the matchmaking. I
yeah,
figure you might as well if you're gonna have Guida in a fight, have him fight another kind of veteran that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
not a
yeah.
3-1 favorite.
Talk about not liking the matchmaking. Why the hell is Misha Tate and Julia Avila on the prelims on ESPN Plus? Like, these ladies should be on the main card. God damn it!
Yeah, I mean, I know some people don't like women's MMA and they're vocal about it. They don't. It's time to go get some popcorn or something. But I don't know how you don't have this fight on it. Misha Tate's a UFC Hall of
Yeah.
Famer, former champion. Um, second fight back. I believe it's her second fight back from the retirement. Um, Julia Vila coming off of a terrible injury, first fight back. But before that,
Mm-hmm.
she was doing some damage in the cage. 9 and
Mm-hmm.
2. Um, Oh boy, this is really a tough pick because you got the unknowns. You don't know where Misha's at. You don't know
Yeah.
has her time passed. As is her time passed? And then Avila coming off the injury. If Avila wasn't coming off an injury, I would definitely pick her to win, just because I would think she'd be the younger fighter
I
that the
mean,
UFC is kind of trying
she
to
had a
build.
baby. She got the injury, and she came. But she looks like none of that happened, though. That's one thing I give to Avila is like she
Yeah,
definitely seems driven to get back in there and start doing what she does. But
it's
and
a good thing they're fighting in the Font Figueiredo weight class too. Good lord.
yeah,
UFC website sucks. Oh
yeah,
my god.
$10 billion.
God. Maybe the
uh,
PFL does have a chance. Um,
yeah.
oh, and Bellato.
Uh,
Bellato's fighting. The one thing Bellator really missed out on was not signing Bellato to fight in
Adolfo
Bellator.
Balato. Yeah,
but
that's
but
probably
yeah,
why he's on the prelim because they don't like we can't be putting him on ESPN.
yeah, yeah. No, that'll be the big guy they'll bring in to fight Eblin. Uh, Eblin versus Bellato. Um, Oh crap! But yeah, great fight. This is Saturday
Yeah,
again. Let me confirm the times because this is a ESPN main card, which
yeah,
is
it's
part of the reason why we're
7 p.m. my
speaking on it
time,
as well. So seven. Okay,
7 p.m. Eastern. So,
there will be a run over with the BKFC cards. So,
hmm
um, the BKFC is a pay per view. I don't think it's going to be on the app unless there's a late minute change.
yeah,
Uh, but with a card like that, you can understand them trying to
yeah.
trying to financially put some money in the bank. So,
Yeah. Hey
um,
man, I mean, not for nothing. ESPN, if it's on ESPN Red, which is ESPN broadcast, record UFC, watch BKFC. That's what I do.
yeah, no, that's a good call. And even if you can't afford the BKFC, definitely check Twitter, help their numbers out. And
Hmm.
if people are going to put these events on like this, like I said, you don't have doesn't have to be your favorite thing in the world, but we don't want everything to disappear. Once it all disappears,
Yeah. Then
things don't get
yeah,
better. They don't get better.
they sure as hell don't.
And then we'll be sitting around hoping that there's another BKFC 8 years
Hmm.
down the line from now. So, um, fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Edit Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. Late show this week, but the fights are tomorrow. So anybody listening, if you could share our link, get it out there, we definitely appreciate it with the short time before the BKFC fights tomorrow. But
Yeah, my fault, by the way. Sorry about that, people.
whether you do or whether you don't, enjoy the fights, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Peace.